Now, please welcome back David Nahai.
So it's my privilege, really, to introduce our next speaker. Congress created the Federal Home Loan Bank System in 1932 to provide a reserve banking system for thrift institutions and the housing finance industry that would come to the rescue of beleaguered homeowners in the midst of the Great Depression. Today, something well over 7,000 institutions are members of the Federal Home Loan Bank System. And I'm pleased today to introduce our second Spotlight Session speaker, Mr. Stephen Traynor, who is the Chief Business Officer at the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. He has served the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, which is one of the premier federal housing finance banks in the nation, for over 2 decades. Under his leadership, the Federal Home Loan Bank has expanded its low-cost funding and support services to allow member financial institutions to best make home mortgages to support all neighborhoods and communities. We look forward to hearing how Stephen and the Federal Home Loan Bank are working to increase access to funding for affordable housing and economic development. It was such a pleasure to speak with him a few minutes ago outside as we were waiting to come on. I think you're in for a treat. He's so knowledgeable and so engaging. Thank you, Stephen.
Good morning, and thank you, David, for the kind introduction. And let me also thank Mary Leslie of LABC for hosting us here today. I'm honored to be here with you this morning, and while this is my first mayoral summit, the bank has been a proud sponsor of the summit for about 10 years. Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, with $106 billion in assets, has 335 member institutions located in California, Arizona, and Nevada. I see some of our members in the audience here today, and also Kevin Murray, one of our board members. Everyone else may not be familiar with the bank, so I'm going to give you an overview of what our mission is. Our public affairs team likes to say we're the biggest bank you've never heard of. And to complicate matters even more, our name is a bit of a misnomer. We're not federal, we're privately owned by our members. We don't originate home loans, and we're not a bank in the traditional sense since we don't take deposits. The only accurate thing is really that we're headquartered in San Francisco. Thank you. What we do at the bank is promote housing, home ownership, and community economic development. And we do that through our access to the global capital markets. We provide low-cost loans to our member institutions so they can make mortgages, small business loans, commercial real estate loans, and other credit. This capital helps provide the fuel for economic development in every community that we serve. And our members include banks, credit unions, industrial loan companies, savings institutions, insurance companies, and community development financial institutions. We're going to play a short video that explains exactly how that works with one of our members right here in Los Angeles.
My sort of entrance into institutions like Broadway that happened back in 1988, I was asked to come in and turn Founders around, it was in trouble. Then I was asked to turn Family around, it was in trouble. And then I've been asked to turn Broadway around when it was in trouble. That just is an unintended career path, but it ended up being my career. And in each case, I sort of had to find a solution for their problems. And so I looked around for a need, and then looked around for an area that you could survive in and not be crushed by the larger institutions. I have a very, very good relationship with the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. I've been working with them since maybe about 1989, so it's been a long time. Broadway started, I think, in 1946, so it's probably about 73 years old. And it was started basically by a group of black investors because during those times, blacks were not allowed to live in certain parts of the city, primarily west of downtown LA, and that was accomplished by just basically not lending to blacks. So they formed their own bank. Over the years, at least under my tenure, that has changed somewhat, and so I'm not as focused on ethnicity as my guiding light, although that's still the principal image that people have of the bank. So we are thought of and referred to as the black institution, and I am black, pretty obviously so, but I focus on the low to moderate. So I'm a very income-focused person. I want to serve the working poor, and that's our clientele. Our product is very, very specific. We only finance situations where, for example, all deferred maintenance is taken care of and the property is brought up to very good living standards, or we won't fund the deal. So small multifamily units, 5 to 25, and C-type buildings, which is sort of your average building in a fairly average neighborhood, and it's pretty much the form of living in Southern California because affordability is such an issue. We basically borrow on a short-term basis from the bank, fund those loans, and then when we sell those loans within 30 to 60 days, we pay it off. If we didn't have access to the bank's line and that credit availability, we literally would be out of business. Our drivers are that finding housing in Los Angeles is a profound, dire need. And getting up every day and being a champion for people who are working hard, trying to find a decent space to live in, is like a religious calling for us. And so myself and my entire team actually are assembled around that cause. So we have a sense of pride that all of our transactions are addressing a real need.
As you can see from the video, our core mission supports community banks like Broadway Federal and large institutions as well. And we provide them liquidity that allows them to lend more. Since the first focus of this summit is housing, let me explain what we do to support affordable housing. We contribute 10% of our income to provide grants to create affordable housing to lower income households and individuals. We get expert advice on this from folks like Ann and Doug on the last panel. This year, we awarded $51 million in affordable housing program rental housing grants, and since its inception since 1990, the bank has awarded over $1.1 billion to affordable housing developers like Doug at Mercy Housing, creating over 140,000 units of quality affordable housing that almost 300,000 folks call home. We also provided $9.3 million in home ownership down payment assistance this year. Working with our member institutions like Broadway, the program is designed for lower income households to receive a matching grant of up to $22,000 for down payment or matching down payment and closing cost assistance. Here in the City of Angels, the bank has 152 member institutions operating 386 branches. These members have pledged more than $8 billion in collateral to us from the county to the bank to support additional lending activity. In total, our privately funded affordable housing program grants awarded in LA have reached over $211 million, helping to develop almost 30,000 units of quality affordable housing, including projects in Skid Row. We have another program called AHEAD. AHEAD grants are made to bank members working with local community groups to provide funding for targeted economic development projects. And that leads us to basically a sea change in what we decided to do. So while bank grants are important, we felt there was an opportunity to do more in order to identify how our investments could make a broader, more long-term impact. We hosted a series of roundtable discussions that found ways to increase the availability of well-paid long-term jobs from companies that provide intensive training and skill development for their workers, and that could make home ownership a viable option for underemployed residents. This served as a blueprint for creation of the groundbreaking Quality Jobs Fund. Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco donated $100 million to this effort. The Quality Jobs Fund invests in small, innovative businesses with a track record of consistent growth and job creation, and also training organizations for which there's a quality job waiting at the end and not just a certificate. Quality jobs create stable, thriving communities where people want to live and raise their families. It's simple. If people don't make enough money, they can't buy a home. We selected the New World Foundation to manage our donor-advised fund. With their experience in targeting smart philanthropic investments, we expect New World to make about 24 program investments that meet very strict criteria and that will advance the field of knowledge about what it takes to create a quality job. And just last week, New World presented lessons learned from the Quality Jobs Fund to the California Future of Work Commission. As a result, the chairman of the commission, California Secretary of Labor Julie Su, mentioned they would like the state of California to replicate the Quality Jobs Fund. And one local example of the jobs created by the fund is LA Federation of Labor, ALCIO. They received a $4.9 million grant to expand a pilot construction pre-apprenticeship program developed by the Miguel Contreras Foundation, and that will employ the formerly incarcerated. These jobs offer a living wage for full-time employees, medical and dental insurance, and retirement benefits. Another local company the Quality Jobs Fund supported is Homeboy Industries with a $5 million grant. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco and how working through our members, we help meet the housing and economic development needs of the communities we serve. The bank thanks Mary Leslie and her team at LABC for their leadership in addressing the challenges in housing, transportation, and job creation. And in closing, we look forward to working with you as solutions are developed today. And working with our member institutions, we will continue to provide the fuel of economic activity, capital. Thank you very much.
Let's give one more round of applause to Stephen Traynor. Now please welcome Michael Rosenfeld, CEO of Woodridge Capital Partners.
Good morning. Born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, Councilmember Krekorian is a third-generation Valley resident who has spent more than a decade in public service. After serving on the Burbank School Board and the California State Assembly, Councilmember Krekorian was elected to Los Angeles City Council in 2009. The councilman chairs the city's Budget and Finance Committee, as well as the Ad Hoc Committee on Job Creation. Among his many accomplishments on the City Council, Councilmember Krekorian has guided the city out of the Great Recession and towards greater economic promise, led the establishment of the city's comprehensive job creation plan, raised the city's minimum wage, worked to have the city adopt a 100% clean energy mandate, and establishing the local business preference program. Councilmember Krekorian has worked to better empower small businesses throughout the city and region. Most recently, has partnered with the LABC Institute to pursue the creation of a regional supply chain inclusion program, Complete for LA. That would open up public and private contracting opportunities for local, small, and diverse-owned businesses arising from public infrastructure investments in major sports, entertainment, and cultural events. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Councilmember Paul Krekorian.
Thank you very much, Michael, and good morning, everyone. What a terrific opportunity to come and talk about new opportunities for small businesses. Thank you all very much for being here and allowing me to be a part of this discussion and a part of the panel that we're about to start. I think as we talk about new opportunities, it's helpful to take a short step back and think about how far we've come in Los Angeles. I've been on the council now since 2010. And when I got elected, I raised my hand and took the oath. We were in the middle of the Great Recession, still suffering from all of its ramifications. The city was facing a budget deficit a projected budget deficit of over $1 billion. Our revenues from sales tax had collapsed. Business tax was dramatically reduced. The temporary occupancy tax was reduced because people weren't traveling to Los Angeles. It was a very dismal time. It was so dismal that Mayor Reardon actually wrote an op-ed to the Wall Street Journal and said, well, the city has to file bankruptcy. There's no way around it. It's inevitable, so they should just get it over with and move on. Well, I'm happy that the city council and the two mayors did not follow Mayor Reardon's advice. We were able to not only eliminate 90% of that structural deficit, we were able to balance the budget and then move forward and develop the strongest reserve the city has ever had in its history. And I like to take as much credit for that as I can, as the budget chair, of course, but it certainly was partly due to the work that we did in City Hall, but it was very much the result of what was being done by the business community, taking advantage of the incredible opportunities that Los Angeles had to offer. So we saw unemployment being cut in the unemployment rate being cut in half. You saw foreign direct investment start to flow into this city. Right now, we're breaking all records for tourism, for traffic through the airport, for cargo through the port. Gross receipts dramatically increased. Business starts way up. We've had, even during the height of the recession, we've had net business growth every single year for over 20 years in this city. So it's clear that from the very dark times that we were facing, the world is now bullish on Los Angeles. And this is a time of incredible opportunity to be investing here, to be starting a business here, to be growing a business that has already started here. This is an incredible time of opportunity, and it's only getting better. When we look at what we have coming up ahead of us, the investments that the taxpayers are making in a world-class transportation infrastructure with Measure M, the investments that we're making in our water infrastructure with Measure W, all of the incredible events that we have coming up, the Major League All-Star Game, Major League Soccer All-Star Game, hopefully the World Cup, and then of course in 2028 the Olympic Games, which the entire world will be watching. So we're doing very well now. We have tremendous opportunity ahead of us because of all of these investments that we're making and the opportunities that these events will present. But the key thing for me, the big priority for me as we're taking advantage of these opportunities, is to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to participate. We can't allow this booming economy of Los Angeles only to benefit international businesses. We have to ensure, or businesses that are coming from other parts of this country, we have to ensure that our local businesses, our women-owned businesses, all of our businesses here in Los Angeles are taking full advantage of this influx of capital, influx of investment, economic vitality that's happening, and that's one of my priorities. And it hasn't always been easy in this city. All of you who are small business people know that too often this city has had a reputation of making it very difficult to get anything done. So we've taken a lot of steps to try to remedy that. I chair the Ad Hoc Committee on Jobs Creation, and in that position we've created a small business commission for the first time in this city to advise the city council on small business issues. Just had their first meeting last week. We've completed our strategic jobs creation plan, which lays out a blueprint for how we're going to move forward. We've created a business response unit, which will be sort of your concierge and bringing departments together to try to get to yeses instead of creating barriers. We've created a small business portal to make it easier for small businesses who don't have lobbyists and don't have lawyers necessarily to wind their way through the bureaucracy of City Hall, which is very often Byzantine. You can go straight to the small business portal and it'll help you to do that. There's a number of steps that we still have to take to make things easier. We're creating what we call the the Jobs and Economic Development Incentive Zones, or JEDI. My staff loves acronyms, so they came up with the JEDI zones, which are coming, and this will be an opportunity to really put targeted investment in certain areas that will include permit fee reductions, expediter services provided to the businesses that are investing there, facade improvement funding, employee training funding, and more. But one of the big topics that we're going to be talking about on this panel shortly is the opportunity that's presented by procurement with the city and with others who are going to be investing here. Right now, this city procures about $4 billion a year in goods and services. $4 billion. And the vast majority of it is spent outside of Los Angeles. So to me, it doesn't make sense for the taxpayers of Los Angeles to be spending $4 billion a year to create jobs and opportunities in other cities and other counties. So that's why I authored the local business incentive program here, which we're going to be talking about a little bit further on the panel. But we have a lot more to do in terms of making procurement easier for small businesses here, and I'm so grateful for LABC's partnership in developing the Compete for LA program, which again you'll be hearing about, which will really be an aggressive, assertive effort to embrace small business, to bring them into this procurement opportunity and make sure that when we have world-class events like the Olympic Games, that we have participation by the world-class small businesses that we have here in Los Angeles. So thank you all very much for being here today, and I'm looking forward to having a deeper discussion on all these issues as part of the panel. So thank you all very much.
Please put your hands together for our next panel, New Market Opportunities to Grow Small Business, moderated by John Vane, President of the LA Convention and Tourism Development Department Commission.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Get the mic going. Before we get started with the panel, I want to say how heartening the last panel was for me to see such distinguished public sector and private sector leaders come together to address the homeless crisis. It's necessary, and like I said, it was very, very heartening. One of the legs of the stool to address homelessness is actually jobs, and that's the subject matter we're going to be discussing today, specifically new market opportunities to grow small businesses. I'd like to introduce the panelists. They all have very distinguished careers, so a formal introduction would probably take half the time we have here. So I will just go through briefly and mention everyone's name and title. The Honorable Paul Krekorian, Council Member for the City of Los Angeles. Gene Hale, Chairman, Greater Los Angeles African American Chamber of Commerce. Mark Morales, President Emeritus of Los Angeles LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. Abigail Sanchez, Vice President, Director of Political Affairs and Policy at Parsons. And Catherine Schlossman, President and CEO of Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission. To set the stage, and the council member did a little bit already, the Los Angeles area is slated to have an incredible influx of investment in infrastructure, an incredible amount, staggering. It's over $150 billion. Moreover, we have an incredible influx of world-class events coming to the city. The 22 Super Bowl, the 23 college football playoffs, and potentially the World Cup in 2026. At the same time, the city, county, proprietary departments, and private sector firms have all made commitments to open up their supply chains to underserved businesses. All of these initiatives provide enormous opportunity for growth of small and diverse businesses in the region. We just heard the council member talk about the city's local business preference program and how we can ensure that LA's small and diverse businesses capitalize on all of the incoming investment and excitement in the region. Here's a couple of statistics regarding the sorts of businesses that can benefit from this influx. Small businesses with fewer than 100 employees made up 98% of the businesses in Los Angeles County. 56% of firms in Los Angeles County are minority-owned, And in 2018, 544,000 businesses were women-owned firms. Having these local businesses and communities benefit from this influx is altogether appropriate. With this backdrop, the LA Business Council Institute has been leading a regional supply chain inclusion initiative dubbed Compete for LA that would create a clearinghouse of regional suppliers and supply chain contracting opportunities with dedicated outreach staff to drive community engagement. This is based off a model called Compete For that was developed for the 2012 Olympics in London, where they successfully registered over 200,000 small businesses and awarded over 14,000 contracting opportunities to small and medium-sized businesses. At its core, what this program does is takes the friction out of marrying up the small businesses with these tremendous opportunities. Council member, you introduced a motion at LA City Council with the support of LABCI and a coalition of over 40 public, private, and nonprofit organizations that's having the city analyze LABCI's Compete for LA proposal and how it can be adopted by the city. A month ago, your ad hoc jobs committee adopted recommendations to hear proposals of how this program could be established and what a public-private governing structure could look like. What's your hope for the proposals, how they will look, and how the private sector can be brought in?
Well, thanks, John. We already have a blueprint, as you mentioned, because of the success of a similar program in London. And I think, first of all, although we're looking at London as the model for this, we should understand that this is something that's going to go far beyond the 2028 Olympics. This has an opportunity to create opportunities for engagement by small businesses in all of these important special events that we have coming up, but also in general. It's one of my great frustrations that in government procurement, we often get these bids back from big companies who say, well, you know, we really wanted to include more small subs, but there just wasn't anybody around. We couldn't find anybody and made our best efforts. And it's nonsense. So marrying the generals with the subs and creating those opportunities is the key to this. So how do we do that? Well, you know, first of all, there has to be a simple online platform that everybody has accessible to that with pre-qualified suppliers so that a big vendor can just go and immediately and easily find their pre-qualified suppliers. We should have businesses that are have a single profile that automatically connects them across the board with contracting opportunities. You know, that are, if they're certified, they should have certifications across multiple jurisdictions, and that should be indicated in there. You have to have outreach and engagement. And again, a frustration, you mentioned the local preference ordinance. It's a very frustrating thing when we do these things to create opportunities, and then businesses don't know that those programs are available. So robust engagement and opportunity, especially in the communities that are already underserved in their engagement, is really important. And minimal barriers for entry, making it as easy as possible for small businesses to participate and become a part of this. I think those are some of the key elements. And then having a governance structure that includes the private sector, public sector, but is not cumbersome and makes it easy and nimble to get things done.
Makes sense. You mentioned the 2028 Olympics. Will there be a small business requirement for those programs?
There definitely will. Well, I shouldn't say definitely. Whenever you're dealing with the IOC, I shouldn't say definitely. But I serve on our ad hoc Olympics committee, and as we're dealing with the organizing committee, that's certainly going to be a priority of the city to ensure we have that kind of engagement.
Great. Kathy, tell us about what Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission is and some of the upcoming events. Okay. And I'd also like you to touch on why it's so important to have these events come to Los Angeles.
Okay. So the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission was founded in 1995 by Mayor Reardon to help bring sports and entertainment events to Los Angeles. We are a private nonprofit. We're governed by a board of directors. We're funded solely by our sponsors. We're chaired by the LA's most popular person, Bob Graziano. Our job is to attract major sporting and entertainment events to Los Angeles, and then once they're here, make sure they're successful, they have a good experience with our city and our county, and make sure they make a difference in our community. And I know you've heard everybody talk a little bit about all the events coming up, but we're calling the next decade, the 2020s, the decade of opportunity for Los Angeles, because we literally, just to give you a timeline, in 2020, next year, we start out with the NCAA Men's West Regionals at Staples Center. We have the MLB All-Star Game at Dodger Stadium. The MLS All-Star Game was announced this week at Bank of California Stadium. In 2022, we're hosting the Super Bowl at the new SoFi Stadium. In 2023, we're hosting the College Football Playoff National Championship, also at SoFi Stadium, and the U.S. Open at LA Country Club. We're a candidate host city for 2026 for the World Cup. And of course, thanks to the leadership of Mayor Garcetti and Casey Wasserman, we're hosting the 2028 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games. The reason these events are so important to the city and to the county is that they generate, first off, other cities around the world compete fiercely for these events because they have significant economic impact and jobs. They generate media visibility. They're a promotional machine. The kind of media and visibility that is generated from these events, you just can't buy. And that helps LA as a tourism destination. They drive social impact and community support. They're very, very important in terms of impact.
Great. How would Compete for LA help with your bids?
So, a number of ways. So, what is really important to these events have the same goals as we do, which is to make a positive impact in the community and create jobs, because they know they're expensive events to bring here, and if we are not benefiting from that, we're not going to be going after them again. So they want to make sure and drive business back here. So if we had a system like Compete for LA that's up and running and working, it helps communicate the opportunities out there, and that is what's so important, is that people don't know this is going on, and that system is going to allow them to do that.
Great. Gene, as a minority business owner, what's made you successful in the procurement of business opportunities?
Thank you very much. I think that for me, the opportunity lies in finding out where the procurements are. Mm-hmm. That's a very time-consuming process, because there are so many online platforms that you have to go search. And that's why I think one of the reasons this Compete for LA is going to be a big help. It's a waste of time for a lot of small business, because they go there and search all day, but there's nothing there. So I think with Compete for LA, they can sort of sort out the bids that they want to go after. The other thing is that, for me, is building the relationships. You have to use all your resources to build relationships. You have to find who the decision makers are, and then you establish those relationships. We have a number of tools in my company that we use to do that, and I'm not shy about trying to use my local politicians to help open doors, but that's what we have to do. We have to be very competitive, and we have to understand that sometimes doors are not going to open automatically for you. You need help. And so those are the kinds of things that we do as a company to be successful. And also, you got to pound the pavement. You got to get out there. As we say in our business, I haven't seen in 30-something years, I haven't seen the deal walk through the door yet. They just don't walk through the doors. Right. You got to go get the deals. And so those are the kinds of things that I think I always talk to the small business groups about. Like, this is what you got to do, And plus, present your product. Present your product. Talk about being competitive. It's not so much of being a minority or a small business. It's about, in today's market, bringing the value, right, the value add. And once you demonstrate that, you get the ear of the people that's willing to give you an opportunity, I think.
So to that end, how would Compete for LA help with the members in the chamber?
Yeah, I think that, again, it would eliminate companies, even like myself, using valuable resources to search all these online platforms. Right. And, I think that's an expense that, when you're utilizing people to look at the websites as opposed to doing business development, that takes away from your productivity. Right. So Compete for LA will give everybody, I think, an opportunity to say, you know what, I want to search out the bids that I want. Right. I want the dollar amount shown, and I want to know what kind of certifications there are. Right. And so those are the kinds of things that I think that we could just have more talk about, but that's what we need to do.
Great. Mark, how do you see this platform helping your constituency?
So even though the LGBT certification is younger than the other minority or diverse certifications, we have the same challenges as all the other communities. And that is, where do we find these opportunities and bid on them prior to them being awarded? Whether it be the LACMA, expansion or the new Academy Museum, how does a small, diverse business find out, how you bid on that project for the goods or services that they have? And on the other side of it is, how do those companies find us? And that is the biggest, challenge to them, but it's also the biggest excuse. Well, we looked for women-owned businesses that could do this type of work, but we couldn't find any, so we used the people we always use. So having one place for the diverse companies to register, to be able to find out about these events and these opportunities, and those opportunities coming to us and being able to find them as well, and to find us. There's a couple of different examples I can use. The utility companies use a supplier clearinghouse, and those of you who are familiar with it. Well, the supplier clearinghouse is only for utilities. So if I'm AT&T or Charter or Southern California Edison and I need to disable vets that work in IT, I can look that up in my system. But we don't, as private employers and private contracts, we don't have access to the supplier clearinghouse. So we have to create something that works on a public and a private side that works for everybody. But we know the clearinghouse works because the goals for the utility companies is 23.5%. That's how much diverse supplier spend the utilities are supposed to hit every year, and many of them are hitting over 40%. And it's because they made it easy for them to find those suppliers.
Right. That's great. Well, to that end, regarding a clearinghouse, one of the things that made Compete 4 so successful in London was their clearinghouse, but also their ability to onboard both certified and uncertified businesses. At Parsons, how do you guys go about that today?
Well, we're challenged. I think that all of you here have already talked about the challenges of big business finding small business, and we have gotten into that, or we were in the little pattern of we work with people that we always work with because you trust them and you want to just deliver. But we also realize that you can't just glean from a list of hundreds of small businesses that are put out by an agency what they do exactly, what they're good at, right? It all has just a contact information, an address, an email address, maybe some codes, some NIC codes. And that didn't tell us very much. So we, in 2017, decided that we would launch a Small Business Partnership Program, or SBP for short. And Parsons invited small businesses not just to, a reception, or not just to shake hands. We really wanted to know who the businesses were, what they did, what they were interested in bidding on, and how we could partner and finding the right procurement to go after together, right? Often a small business will say, well, I really want to be on your team, and what do you want to do? Anything. So we wanted to make sure that we opened the conversation, not dismissed that business, brought them in and said, listen, our doors open for one-on-one mentorship. We have a commitment to you during our procurement and delivery time to work with you and help you find the certification wherever the agency that we were pursuing the contract with, to help you get your certification, whether it was calling or writing a letter saying we are considering or we want to put this firm on our team, we'd like to help expedite their certification process. But in that process, we found that it was very cumbersome indeed to be registered with the different agencies. We brought in through Metro, DWP, LA County. We also brought in the two ports, Port of LA, Port of Long Beach, as well as the airport, to have them under one roof describe their vendor program and opportunities and requirements. And each of those agencies said, we've never been brought in together and we've never had this opportunity. So understanding the requirements, understanding who the contacts are, and building those real relationships of longevity and not just a handshake at an event for 2 hours. We also learned a lot about readiness of the small businesses. So we produce workshops one on how to be proposal ready, something very basic that you may not think of, which is just preparing resumes and the capabilities and services that a company provides, as well as envision training, which is sustainability training for transportation and infrastructure projects. So we really took a committed effort there to provide the training as well as pay for certification to take the test. So it's essentially paying for the sitting fee because, again, the resources are not there. So yes, it takes more than looking at a list. It does. I agree with you, Councilman, that you can't just say, "What, I didn't find anybody." It really just takes a concerted effort, and it can be done.
And how would you find those businesses, and how would they find you?
We often attend any prime contractor events,
right.
And that's one-on-one, a quick interview, 30 seconds. How are you? How do you do?
Speed
what
dating.
do you do? Speed dating, essentially, exactly. And that's how we would find and build those relationships, or word of mouth through other project managers who had worked with people. But then we get a list, right? So I think that isn't, having a compete for LA clearinghouse where we can look by perhaps a discipline or location would be valuable to us.
Great. Procurement opportunities in Los Angeles have been notoriously difficult for small businesses to access. Councilmember, creating opportunities, as you discussed, for local small businesses has been one of your top priorities in the City Council. In fact, you established the Local Business Preference Program that provides competitive advantage in Los Angeles County for businesses. What motivated you to take that challenge on?
Well, as I mentioned, it creates a great opportunity that the city needs so much stuff. We need so many things and services. We spend a lot of money. And it was a frustration of mine when I found that of the money that we're spending, 85–90% of it was being spent outside of Los Angeles.
Crazy.
So again, as I mentioned earlier, taxpayer money is creating jobs elsewhere. And now why is that? Because when you're in a competitive bidding process and you have to pay Los Angeles rents and Los Angeles labor costs and so forth, your bid is not likely to be as attractive as a bid from some competing business in North Carolina. So it's an uneven playing field because it costs more to do business in Los Angeles. So the idea was, let's offset some of that cost differential by creating a local business preference in procurement, so local businesses would get an 8% advantage to offset some of that cost differential. So that was what originally motivated it. I will say that I wish that people would take advantage of it more. And it hasn't been as effective as I would have hoped. It's been in the hundreds of millions rather than in the billions.
Right.
I think that may in part be because, as Jean was saying earlier, sometimes we have these programs and businesses just aren't aware of it and they don't have the time to go and explore it and find out about it.
Well, marketing my last business was marketing, and if people don't know about the goods or services or the opportunities, it doesn't much matter. So yeah. I think we'll get to that topic a little later, but it's pretty critical.
So one of the things that we're doing actually now to sort of simplify it and have a second opportunity to let people know about it is we're consolidating a number of the procurement incentive programs that the city has had. We've done it a little bit on an ad hoc basis. You have the local business preference, you have the small local business preference, we have a transitional jobs preference, we have a number of different preferences that we give to businesses in procurement. We're now in the process of consolidating these all into a single program. So again, it'll be easier to do the investigation and find out about it. And businesses that have multiple qualifications might be able to find a greater advantage than in procurement.
Right. Jean, so beyond the chamber and all of your other civic leadership, you're also the founder and the CEO of one of the largest minority-owned businesses in the region. What impediments are sort of specific to the minority community in obtaining these sorts of opportunities?
In government, procurement is getting the information and the access to the people that are responsible for awarding the contracts. Somehow, there has to be a nexus between the contracting agency and local officials. And what I'm suggesting is there needs to be more accountability And I think through this commission that you spoke of, you could have that. Because, if you look at the data, you'll find that when Mayor Villaraigosa was mayor, I should say, we did an audit, the chamber, and what we found was that minorities represented 1% of the procurement dollars in LA. But yet and still we hear people talk about, we make up 90% of the population, so forth and so on. Now, what's the reason for that? There's no accountability. So the people that are awarding these contracts, we all have our biases in a way. And if all things are equal, that person might want to give that contract to a friend of theirs, as opposed to someone they don't really know. So what has to take place is, through this nexus that I'm describing, maybe through the commission, the Small Business Commission, there could be some reporting data coming up through the ranks about, and we're not talking about just discrimination here, we're talking about just accountability. You want to know how many of those contracts were awarded to, Hispanics, women, and African Americans. And the reason why you want that information is because you want to hold that supervisor, whoever is responsible for that department, to increase those numbers. That's what we're talking about through sensitivity training. And I believe that with the Compete for LA, part of this responsibility could be, looking at those numbers and reporting those numbers back to the city and say, we need to do something about this. Otherwise, we keep talking about the disparities, but we're not talking about solutions. So those are the kinds of things I think that, people and you can talk to the minority community all day long. What they will tell you is that they believe there's some sort of bias going on. And how do you get rid of that? I don't know if you can, but at least someone should be held accountable. And they should be held accountable to the council. Also, I believe that one of the things that the city can do to increase the participation of these groups is to follow the patterns of, like, the airport. They have a small business program. The LA County has a small business program. City of San Francisco has a small business program. But guess what they do? When they put an RFP out on the street, they say these goals are, quote, mandatory. Now, be careful, because we're not talking about quotas. We're talking about goals. And if you looked at the numbers at the airport, those contractors, they already know the tone has been set, that they must come in with a plan that includes these people. Not that they're going to make a good faith effort, because they don't care about a good faith effort. But we have to have the intestinal fortitude to say, we're not afraid that this is going to violate Proposition 209, because we're not talking about quotas. As we all know, Supreme Court struck down quotas under Ronald Reagan's presidency. So those are some low-hanging fruit things that I think that we can do. But we have to just take again, I'll use the word intestinal fortitude to say there is nothing wrong with contractors, general contractors, having a mandatory goal. Right. It works at DWP, it works at LAWA, but the city of LA does not have that. Right. Those are the things that can make a difference.
Absolutely. So, Mark, I have a similar question for you. What do you see as the greatest impediments to small and diverse businesses having access to these opportunities?
Well, finding them is the first one, but I want to add on to what Gene said about reporting. So I sit on the State of California Department of Insurance Diversity Task Force, and what we do at the Department of Insurance is we actually require insurance companies to report by law how much they spend with women, minority, disabled vet, and LGBT-owned businesses. So in the 5 years that they have been reporting, so now there's no goals and there's no mandate. It's just transparency. All they do is report. The dollar amount on the first survey for California diverse businesses was $930 million. That's how much insurance companies were spending with diverse companies. 5 years later, that number is $1.94 billion. So just by reporting, the number went up 96%. But let me give you something even more impactful. LGBT spend, so insurance companies spending with California LGBT businesses when the survey started was $150,000. And in the last survey, it was $10 million. That is huge to a small, diverse community group. And that's just reporting. That is not a goal. That's not a mandate. All you have to do, you can report zeros across the board, and many insurance companies do. The idea is if we could gather that information, right, then we could use that as something to help other companies move from 0 to 1, 2, 3. And other companies will be, I'll tell you, the insurance companies want to be in the top 5, right? And Kaiser is always number 1. But Kaiser actually spends more than all the other insurance companies that have to report combined. And so how do we get those other insurance companies to come up? That's what we're working on in the task force. But that reporting component, if we make it easy, by using something like Compete for LA, for them to be able to report back to the Department of Insurance or to the city, we would be able to capture that information. And just by capturing it, that number will go up.
Great. Absolutely. Many U.S. cities don't recognize LGBT certifications in their procurement process. What's being done to address that, and what's the state of that in the city of Los Angeles?
So it's interesting you guys brought up Prop 209. Those of you in the audience that are not familiar with small business enterprise and local small business enterprise for city, state, and government contracts within California is because of Prop 209. So you cannot have preferential treatment for women, minority, or veteran. You can because veteran's not in the law. But the reason why we have these other certifications is because you can't give preferential treatment on the public sector because of Prop 209. But the private sector does not have that issue, right? So insurance companies can report women, minority, LGBT, and disabled vet. The city of LA is the largest city and the first large city in the nation to actually start tracking LGBT certification on LA Bavin. And that just happened in, I think it was September is when it was rolled out. And so, again, going back to the insurance, if we're being tracked, you're going to see the spend move. And the utilities already track LGBT spend. So the utilities, the insurance companies, 157 of the Fortune 500 companies track LGBT spend. I was in Tampa for the NGLCC, which is the national chamber, and the city of Tampa just opened up their procurement to LGBT because they don't have a Prop 209.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
That was a long answer to your question.
No, all good. I know people are probably getting hungry, but...
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good. So, Abigail, what are some of the issues you face as a prime contractor as it relates to meeting the SBE requirements for local businesses?
We do strive to not just meet but exceed the goals, and I would say that 9 out of 10 times we exceed those goals. What we do, what the barriers are, is that sometimes our SBEs that we know that we want to work with have a hard time getting bonding and insurance, right? So, or they're not able to get a loan or so forth to keep, or they don't have actually, the money or the reserves to take on greater risk, right? It's a shared risk when you are in any kind of a procurement. So sometimes, or JVs, we want to bring on a partner that is a small business and is in a joint venture side by side as an equal, right? Because we want to promote small business or being a sub to the business. But bonding, insurance, taking on risk, those are the 3 top barriers for us to do business with small businesses.
And do you guys facilitate that in any way?
We have some limitations to that and what we can do. We do our very best, but those are things that are really hard, right? The bonding, insurance, loans, the risk. The risk is maybe a little bit easier, but the rest of it is harder.
Understood. So, Kathy, what are some of the challenges in winning major bids to major events that you face?
So we like to say we don't have any challenges in Los Angeles because we are the perfect host city, but there are a few concerns out there. Traffic and transportation always comes up. We actually get hit with, you have too many events in this city because events want to be the only game in town. Actually, some of the major events that we're bidding on will only allow you to bid on it if there's no other major high-profile event going on in your city during that year, which is a challenge because we obviously have a lot of events here. But in order for us to continue to be successful to attract all these events, we need a true public-private partnership. We need our city and our county to invest in these events because they bring so much public benefit here. And luckily for us, we do have huge advocates in County Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas and our own city councilman who's on the panel here, our mayor. They understand the benefit that these events are bringing and the jobs and the social impact, the community impact, and that is really important because these events are looking for that kind of support. So in order for us to continue to bring them here, we need to have that.
Great. So as we discussed before, education and outreach is really important because if there's programs and people don't know about them, they're going to fail. Earlier this month, USC's Program for Environmental and Regional Equity, or USC PEER, because that's a mouthful, released a new report commissioned by LABCI that identified nearly 49,000 small businesses in key industries that are located in investment-ready neighborhoods. These are businesses that with a little bit of education, technical or financial support, or public support could be ready to win contracting opportunities. From an economic standpoint and an equity standpoint, this could be huge for the city, for the region. So, council member, how could USC PEER's work serve as a roadmap for community engagement for the city?
So the study provides us with really granular, detailed, meaty data to identify priority neighborhoods and priority demographics to identify outreach opportunities. And it's really extremely valuable. And let me just, again, put outreach into a little bit of a context. I mentioned the local business preference ordinance that a lot of local businesses had no idea about. I was sitting in a meeting of the Ad Hoc Jobs Committee with the leaders of all of the local chambers of commerce, right. And we were talking about it. The program had been in place for a couple of years, and they didn't know that it existed, the leaders of the chamber. So we've done an inadequate job of outreach in a lot of respects. When I started the Jobs Committee, we did an assessment of all of the many programs that the city has to offer, over 60 different incentive programs for local businesses, pages of them. Again, people are not aware that those opportunities are out there. So this outreach is critical to success on procurement, but also in doing business more economically in Los Angeles in general. So what this data will give us is an opportunity to identify where are the businesses that need that extra information, need to be informed about specific things. Where are the businesses that need more than information, need a little bit of help with developing their eligibility, developing their ability to deal with the city bureaucracy and so on. And where you find those overlaps, where is capital needed, where are other sorts of things needed, you find those overlaps, and that will help us to prioritize, rather than just putting a notice in our DWP bill or this sort of scattershot effort to do outreach. This will be very targeted kind of outreach that's prioritized to where it'll do the most good.
That's great. And Mark, sort of in that regard, how important would this be in the LGBT business community, and would the chamber maybe be a mechanism for that outreach?
So when we talk about what small businesses need, I kind of put it in three categories. They need capital, they need connections, and they need capacity to do business-to-business type transactions. But if you talk to a small business owner, they think they only need connections. They just need the introduction to that customer. By having this one source, and again, it's for a small business owner, it's like you don't know what you don't know. You don't know, if you don't know about the SBA, and they can help you, start a business, write a business plan, do your projections, go to a bank. These are free services that are provided by the government that your tax dollars pay for. But I can't tell you how many people don't know that they exist. Right. If we have just one space, and it's not just my community, it's all the diverse communities, there's resources out there to help us, as small business owners, but we don't know they exist, and we don't have time to go search them. If we have one place to register, and I know that some of the certifications, are very similar in what they ask, that they could identify, hey, I'm an LGBT-owned business, but that's not tracked by Metro, but you qualify for a small business enterprise, and here's the information, and here's a link for you to apply for that certification. That's huge for those minority-owned businesses, because you think you get your certification and that's all I need. right? I'm just going to take this and I'm going to get a contract, right? Here's my certification. Where's my contract? It doesn't work that way. We have to help them build capacity. We have to give them the capital and that step up, and those things exist, and we can plug those people and those services into the system as well. That would work great for not only my community, but for all of them.
That's great. So in that regard, Gene, what do you think the most effective way to have outreach into the African American business community?
Again, I think there has to be a nexus between accountability and the contracting agencies that report up. What you find is that you can't make these decisions in a vacuum. You have to have data. And I think that what you have to do is sort of like the state of California. It's not illegal, by the way, to capture this data as to who these contracts are being awarded to, as long as you're not going to use them in a way where you're going to file a lawsuit against someone. I think that if we were able to, and I think the commission that we're talking about here, I think that could be a good mechanism where this reporting data comes through, and then someone has to take action and say, okay, in this part of town, there's nothing going on over there, but we've had 100 bidders, nothing awarded. Then you look at the agencies themselves and find out which agencies are awarding contracts, and then you go talk to those agencies and you want to hold them accountable. And this is kind of like being targeted into different communities, not only African American community, but this is how you get the numbers up. Because as I said, the audit that we did on the city of LA years ago when Antonio was the mayor, very dismal. So it really didn't matter if you were black, blue, red, or yellow. Right. It just wasn't happening. So there was no reporting. And Antonio, the mayor was very graceful. He said, I'm glad you brought this to my attention. Right. I said, so, well, why don't we do this, try to get the numbers up? I said, I have another one for you. The city does not have a service-disabled veteran program. Why don't we implement that? All you have to do is amend Tom Bradley's ordinance, small business ordinance, and there you go. And that was accomplished. But this other side is where we really need to help.
Well, it sounds like accountability is really important. How do you see that sort of playing out?
Well, again, I think that the council people, they have to really put something in place to make sure that the division heads or the department heads understand that there's some impact here on you personally. Yep. And it's your responsibility to get these numbers up in a way where if you look at the data again, they're just going in one direction. Right. You want to change that flow.
Well, public disclosure of the data, I think, is probably...
Absolutely, transparency. So, I just think that that's the key to a lot of this stuff. You have to know what the numbers are. You have to know what the data is telling you. And if you don't know that, then you're just shooting in a vacuum.
Makes sense.
And if I can add
yes,
to that,
please.
Making that sort of information public provides accountability in the marketplace as well, not just from government, but from customers as well, who see that and think, how come you're not doing a better job to reach out to my community?
That's right.
And I think that will make a big difference.
That makes sense. So Abigail, would a targeted community engagement tool help bolster Parsons' supplier diversity program, and if so, how?
Absolutely. One, Councilman, I think you expressed that very nicely to say it's one place that we can find exactly who we want to do business with, right? What kind of company it is that we are looking to team with and partner. The other is the outreach, right? Even for a big firm, it's difficult to do outreach sometimes. And the other piece to that is knowing that the small businesses are being supported and they have tools and trainings and they have a place to go when they do need help, with something from resumes to finding maybe someone who can help them with the bonding and insurance issues and others. So I think that, Compete for LA is should have been here yesterday in my book.
So Kathy, many of the locations of the upcoming events are in regions that have high concentrations of small businesses. How can you bring those small businesses into the bidding process?
Right, so I think what's really interesting is that we go after, Sports and Entertainment Commission of the City, go after these major events because we want them to bring visitors from out of town to spend money in our cities. But the events want from us in return, they want community participation. So they have a number of events that they do. It's not just about, let's just use Super Bowl as an example. It's not just about the event that happens on Sunday in the stadium for 65,000 people. They have events going all week long that are free or close to free, that are open to the public. They want community participation in those. They want people to volunteer. But I think the most interesting thing about Super Bowl and some of these events is they have job opportunities that tie into exactly what we're saying, which is they have a program called Business Connect that they do the year leading up to a Super Bowl in a city to make sure that their vendors are hiring people in the local markets. It is very important for them to make sure that that money is staying here, and I think that's very exciting to us, and we want to make sure that it gets out there. And I think what everybody is saying here, and it's so interesting, is there's so much. We have so much in the city. It's just communicating and making it easy for everybody. And what's been fun for us in this whole project and figuring out how to convey this is everybody is saying the same thing here, just a little different twist on it. And so our organization is partnered with LA Business Council and also the LA Coalition, because we like to say that we have the sizzle coming with all these very sexy events. We've got the media spotlight and visibility that everybody needs to get the message out. So we're going to take that sizzle and make sure that we're all on the same page with the message, because there's some study done that you have to hear a certain message like 10 times before somebody actually remembers it. So if you're just getting your message out once, and if you're all of us are saying the same thing, just a little different angle, it messes it up. You have to say the same thing repeated times. So with the LA Coalition, with the LA Business Council, we're trying to do that, because we all have huge microphones and we want to make sure and get the message out about the opportunities that these events are bringing, so we take advantage of it and spend that money that you said we weren't spending.
Okay, great. So I have one last question for all of you, sort of rapid fire, and we'll kind of work our way down the line. But if you could snap your fingers and make one change that would benefit local, small, and diverse businesses, what would it be? We'll start with Kathy.
Awareness. I mean, I think it's all about one microphone, one place to go, not 100 different places to go. We're so blessed with so much opportunity here, but we have so many people doing those things, just like I just said, just one single source where everybody knows where to go and take advantage of these opportunities.
Great.
I echo that, and yes, the one single place opportunity, but really an invested and committed, a dedicated effort to really work with the small businesses. There are so many to offer. We talked earlier in the green room about my father was in small business, and I think if he had just a little bit extra help and guidance and could benefit from resources, that business would have taken off. And I think there are so many in LA ready to take off right now.
Mine would be, obviously I would like to have had this 2 years ago, but what we do have to do, and going back to what Jean said earlier, we need to make it easy and we need to make it free, right? For a small business, it is onerous on them to register on 30 different platforms to deal with 30 different companies to get into those companies to do business with them. If there was one place that I could say, hey, I make furniture and this is my NICS code, and it was free, and I could get to Metro, I could get to LACMA, I could get to the Academy, I could get to City National Bank's opportunities, right? I work for City National Bank, had to throw that in there.
Right.
So if there was one place that I could get all of that, and I only had to register once, that would be a huge, it would remove a huge roadblock that we have today.
Well, I'm back to what I said before, accountability and transparency. We can't get past that. And the accountability has to come from the different departments that are awarding these contracts. They have to be held accountable.
Right.
So I think for small businesses broadly, not just in the procurement arena, the number one thing that I would hope would happen is for government to the greatest degree possible, get out of the way. And we've seen a great deal of progress, I think, in some of our departments. But the truth is, Los Angeles is a very big battleship, and we don't turn very quickly. Some of our competing cities are little catamarans, and we're a big old battleship. And so it's really incumbent upon all of us in government, for the general managers of all the departments that touch businesses, to change the culture so that we can understand that we need to help businesses accomplish what they need to accomplish. I get that bureaucrats have a limited job, and that job of regulation is important, and it is important. but we need to figure out ways to be problem solvers, to get what's needed to get done by that regulation without impeding unnecessarily the progress that our businesses are already making. And if we do that, Mark, we'll be on the way up.
Great. And Gene had a...
Yeah, I'll just leave this with you. When Jimmy Hahn was the mayor, we created what we call the Small Local Business Advisory Council. Eric Garcia, I was the chair, Eric was the co-chair, so was Wendy Gruhl. And we had all these great plans and things that we wanted to get done, and they weren't getting done. So they took the name of the committee, the Small Local Business Advisory Committee, and people started calling it Slowback. Nothing got done. So we don't want to get in that trap with the commission either. So I guess that's the point I'm making.
Give me your list, Gene. Give me your notes.
Well, it does sound like the Compete for LA platform can address a lot of these issues, ranging from awareness to accountability and so forth. So thank you for your leadership in helping bring this to the city. So
thank you
all.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Yes, sir.